when he was talking to HR. I can't remember, but I mean, I did watch it, but it was unclear as to if that was Miles creating the experience or if that experience, the entire experience, was given to Miles. I don't know.
I mean, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
It was, it struck me that when HR, hold on, I wrote these names down. When HR said he called something, the mind creates this thing called the Ascara to help pass the time, to help protect the mind through its. And then when the guy he called something like a Rita hawk, and he made the terrible hawk sound. And my wife was like, what was that terrible sound? It made me wonder about Miles O'Brien's perception of that reality. And if he was making those things up to get through that, because he had made the character up as well. So how much did he know about this society? And so I pose the idea that maybe everything that he imagined, including this Rita Hawk and these Ascaras, all that stuff was just a part of a construct that his mind created. So maybe that was his own.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying stuff to support your argument. But,
I like that. That's that was sort of the implications that I got as well. So going back to like the punishment and there's no checks and balances, you're totally right, because I don't know, well, we aren't told from the time that they say, okay, you're asking too many questions, to being charged with espionage. Was there a trial? Was there any kind of checks and balances? And the same with Riker and Frame of Mind. Like, he was taken, captive. So where's the trial? It
would seem that if your punishment is something where they can inject memories of 20 years inside, say, an hour, or even say 2 hours, 3 hours, that the solution, the punishment being the solution to the problem, is so swift and efficient that maybe they're not spending enough time looking at the things that are happening to say, is this person actually committing espionage, or is he just asking too many questions and annoying this other person?
Yeah.
I think as a society, maybe, what are they called? The Agatharans?
Oh, yes. Agrathans?
Agrathans? Maybe they were just too quick to throw him,
Yeah, where's the evidence? Where's the guilty? Where's the whole system that we are used to, that most people would say, okay, before giving a punishment, what's the evidence to support? And is the punishment in proportion to the crime? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They obviously don't have that. But in Frame of Mind with Riker, though, I think they captured him and they were trying to get his secret Federation technology. So they just needed to get him on the hook as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But with Miles, it was different.
Yeah, definitely.
Poor guy. He doesn't deserve it.
I know. So it was interesting that when Miles first gets on Deep Space Nine and Bashir asks him, well, were you alone? And he's like, yes. And he's just so unwilling to admit that there was another person there, like HR. And it felt like that they were good friends, that HR really helped him through 19 of those years. But he was just so adamant to say, nope, I was alone. I was alone. I was alone.
Yeah, I sat and I pondered for a good bit why he wouldn't just be open with his friends about this. And I came up with a couple of keywords. Vulnerable. He doesn't want to be vulnerable. He's a little proud. He's a bit insecure. He needs to be strong around others so they feel comfortable around him, because we definitely saw that in this episode where people were treating him a little bit differently because of the things that he had gone through. And then, of course, at the end of it, when he actually admits to Bashir that he's ashamed because they feel like he should have evolved past these emotions, these basic emotions, because at the end of the day, we're just human animals. We'll never evolve past that. I think that's something that as we have the ability to have conscious decision, and our consciousness affects our actions, and our ability to have empathy for animals and other people allows us to make better decisions, which is the point Bashir was making to him. But I think those are some of the main things. And I can tell you, I know people are very uncomfortable about showing their vulnerabilities in front of, and that was kind of the main one that I think Miles just didn't want to be. I mean, he's a proud Irish dude.
He is. One thing that I liked about it was that Miles wasn't getting any better from his experience until he was willing to admit what happened and to become vulnerable, to accept what he had done. And I mean, because that's a major acceptance. I mean, if you kill someone, whether justified or not, like that is a lot to take on, especially when, like you said, he has the ideals of Starfleet and that we have evolved past this. Well, put in scenarios just like he was, you are needing food. So you are going to make sure you have that. I mean, it's live or die.
There's so much strength in being vulnerable and allowing your vulnerability to create true healing. I know that we've had to do that as a family many times. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I will say that being able to admit when you're wrong or being able to ask for help is, in my opinion, a true show of strength. And I think it's something that, from my perspective, we needed in 94, 95, but a lot more today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that and like how sometimes I get pretty stubborn and I just don't want to admit or become vulnerable. And it always seems more scary in my mind. Like, well, I could never admit what I have done, ever, ever, ever. And then slowly, as I let down those barriers and let people in, and then just saying it out loud, and it's like, it's such a release. And then like the other person's like, well, that's not so bad. What are you worried about? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's a huge release and comfort, especially when you talk to someone who you can trust. But it just, your mind just makes it feel so monumental that you just can't get over it. You better keep it secret. You better keep it, pushed down. Don't have any feelings about it. It's so very difficult. And I really related with Miles in that episode and his, just frustration of trying to deal with it on your own. I mean, you want to be independent. Just put me to work. Come on, Cisco. Just put me to work. Don't make me go see a therapist. Don't make me be vulnerable. Don't make me get over it, quote unquote.
Yeah. I loved Cisco in this episode. He was barely in it. But when he had his sit down meeting, you could see when O'Brien came walking through, Avery Brooks's expression was this expression of like, okay, how am I going to handle this? Here it comes. Like you could see it in his face. It was so good. So specific. And then when he sat down, and I think this is just an Avery Brooks thing, but he sat down, put his hand on his head like this, with his fingers. And I've seen him in interviews and he does that. And he's an interesting character anyway. But when he did that, he started talking to O'Brien through compassion. You could feel the compassion coming out of him. Mm-hmm. And instead of just going right into I've heard this and I've heard this and I've heard this, and I'm your commanding officer and you're going to do A, B, C, and D, and that's an order to get out of here, which he could have done. And he did have to do a little bit at the very end, but that's not how he first approached it. And that compassion helps people to open their feelings a little bit. And this is maybe a tough thing for a proud Irish guy or a proud Italian guy in my case to discuss from time to time. But I have found that true change only comes through love. And so I was really pleased to see Cisco kind of approach it from that perspective, before the authoritarian perspective that, and he wasn't even that hard on him. he didn't pull a full Picard on him.
A full Picard. Well, okay. Yes, I can see that. No, I have to agree because you're exactly right how Sisko approaches it. Like he invites Miles to sit down on his couch, not across from the desk, where that would be the authoritarian, but, sits with him side by side, is looking at him with that openness. But I do appreciate that he's like, no, you're not going to work. You are suspended. Like he lays down the law, but he did the pre-work before that. So Miles knew where Sisko was coming from, that it's like, I am doing this to help you because I care, because I love you, and I want you to get better.
And even when he finally had to drop the hammer and tell him, no, you're doing this, like Miles says to him, please, I'm asking you as a friend or something. And he goes, I wish I could.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, man, that's a stand-up guy, because when you care about somebody, you don't take the easy way out. You will have the hard conversation with somebody if you really care about them. Exactly. It makes you uncomfortable. It makes them uncomfortable, but you're going to sit down and say, I care about you enough to say this, and he did that. And that was pretty right on.
Man, that's a really good point. You made me think of a situation in my life, and yeah, I need to step up. I need to be a Sisko in a situation right now in my life. Oh.
Picard would not have done that as much as I like Picard, but he's a little, well, he needs to find his feelings sometimes. Maybe he needs to sit down with Sisko and talk about feelings.
Yeah. So one thing that I really liked about Hard Time is that we get to experience Miles going through basically PTSD. And it's evident all throughout the episode, especially at the beginning, like where he's like pulling Quark's ear because he's not getting a drink fast enough. Come on, dude. It's just a drink. Or, barking at Bashir or Jadzia. And it's like, whoa, this is so out of character for Miles. And like he admits to Bashir that he almost hit Molly and all she wanted to do was color and have some daddy time. And, him defying not going to therapy. And, he's showing all these signs of typical PTSD. And it is mentioned in the episode as well, like this trauma that he has experienced. Like we have to go through it, work through it, and learn to live with these emotions. Because as Bashir says, like we can't undo these memories. I can't erase them.
Yeah, I mean, they medicate him in the end, but he says, the feelings are still going to be there. And unfortunately, life happens to us and we have to learn to live around those things. But he does show so many signs of PTSD. And I have some friends who have come back. One of my closest friends came back from Afghanistan many, many years ago, and he was a totally different person. He was angry. He had a short fuse. And I mean, this is somebody I knew since I was crawling, and he's still a close friend to me to this very day. But it was really awful to watch somebody who was so open and free loving go through all of this terrible, I didn't even know what it was at the time because that's how young I was. But, those are the things though that our true American heroes do for us and they take on. And, and we love them and we appreciate them defending our freedoms. We thank them for that. My children say thank you to them when they see them in public. From time to time, I buy dinners for them anonymously.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yes. Oh,
we do things for them because they do things for us. But PTSD is a real thing.
Yeah. Well, we see with Miles, like you said, he does get some like antidepressant, but it's not really anything that is fixing the problem. It's just helping him cope and giving him strategies to hopefully eventually learn to live with it. And like with Riker, we don't really see anything except at the very end, he destroys the set of Frame of Mind, and how much release he gets from that. And you can just see what it means to him to destroy that set with his bare hands, ripping it down.
He said, I don't think I could sleep well knowing that set is still up. And then we only see it for a split second at the end. We see Miles O'Brien go